Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to call this meeting of the board to order. Would like to have a reading of the meeting notice, please, by Secretary Smith.
The Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Erie, Pennsylvania, and the Board of Directors of the City of Erie Regional Career and Technical School will meet in regular session on Wednesday, August 12th, 2015 in the auditorium at East High School, 1001 Atkins Street at 6 o'clock p.m. by request of the President, Robert S. Casillo.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Harkins?
Here.
Mrs. McNair?
Here.
Mr. Bertrunger?
He's excused.
Thank you. Ms. Shenley?
Here.
Mr. Spagel?
Here.
Mrs. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Excused. He will
Mr.
be here later,
Thank
as I
you.
understand.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Here.
Mr. Casillo?
Present. Okay. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for Carol Brown, excuse me, retired custodian, who passed away on August 2nd, 2015, and the 3 students who lost to gun violence, this summer. Shakur Franklin on July 25th, 2015, Elijah Jackson on July 24th, 2015, and Jacob Puchinski, who also passed on July 11th, 2015. So I ask that Mr. Tom Spagel please lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this point, I wonder if we could have Janine Calabrese come forward. Janine? Please come up to the stage. Dr. Battams has something for you.
Mr. Casillo, fellow directors, it's a real honor for me to present this Alumni Achievement Certificate to Janine Calabrese, a graduate of Central Career and Technical School from class of '08, for outstanding athletic accomplishments as a multiple medal winner during the 2015 Special Olympics World Games in Los Angeles. And thank you so much for serving as an ambassador for Erie and Erie's public schools. Your accomplishments, attitude, and determination will inspire our students for many years to come. What a wonderful example of the greatness that exists in our students, Janine. We're so proud of you, and please accept this on behalf. Would you like to say anything?
I enjoyed swimming with a bunch of athletes from around the world that I've never done. It was my first World Games, and in 100 backstroke and 200-meter backstroke. So it was a new experience for me. My whole family and I have never been there before. It was nice. I had nice rooms. I was on campus of University of Southern California.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Janine. It's indeed a pleasure. And Mr. and Mrs. Calabrese, thank you for coming. Certainly, you have a beautiful, great daughter to be proud of. Certainly, we as a board share that pride. Thank you.
Janine is a community treasure. We just love being part of it and being able to have some good news.
That was terrific. Thank you very much. I'd like to announce that the board met in executive session this evening, Wednesday, August 12th, 2015, in the library at East High from 5:04 to 5:54 regarding personnel, negotiations, and legal matters. At this portion, we would like to hear from the citizens who would like to speak. Persons desiring to speak for 5 minutes must submit their request in writing to the Secretary's office at least 1 week prior to the board meeting. All others may speak 3 minutes. This evening, 5-minute speaker is Mr. William McDonald of Erie, speaking to the topic of Erie School District business. Mr. McDonald, are you present this evening? Mr. McDonald here this evening? I don't see Mr. McDonald. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board this evening? You have 3 minutes. Please come to the podium, state your name, and please write your name and address on the sheet that's provided at the podium. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Mary Hormansky.
I'm sorry.
My name is Mary Hormansky.
Hi, Mary. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have enough to go around?
Sorry, I didn't know how many people were going to be here, so I didn't print enough out.
Take that with you. All right.
My son was in Special K at Emerson Gridley School. His teacher was Mrs. Goodwin. His OT was in November, didn't start until November of 2014. His PT didn't start until May of 2015. I wish that they would have given us as parents more information about what we needed to know that we needed a doctor's note for his prescription for his physical therapy. Paul Cosgrove didn't tell us until January of 2015, which was his worker from the Achievement Center in January, that we needed that note. Right away, I went out and got that from the doctor, and still even through his IEP, my son's physical therapy did not start until May of this year, which was the end of the school year, which he only had a couple physical therapies before the end of the school year in his OT. On the second day of school in his special kindergarten class, there's 1 teacher, 2 aides, only 7 students. The second day of school, my son comes home crying. He had spent 3 years at the Barber Center, 10 kids in his class, 1 teacher, 2 aides. Never had a problem, never any injuries, nothing. He came home from school crying, telling me his teacher called him pee potty. I asked why. He said because he peed his pants. I said, why are you peeing your pants? And he said, because the teacher didn't take him to the bathroom. With him being born so early, he was born at 26 weeks, he had a severe brain bleed, and he never thought he was going to be potty trained. So he had a note from the doctor that went to the school, and he knew to take him to the bathroom on a regular basis. The teacher did not even knows that there was a bathroom in the classroom. So on a regular basis, he was peeing his pants because his teacher refused to take him to the bathroom. I have all the paperwork from a lot of injuries in the 3 months that he was in school. The last injury was an injury to his head. My son has brain seizures. The neurodoctor from down in Pittsburgh had had enough, and so had I at this point. We requested my son have his own aide in the school. Paul Cosgrove did not agree with this. He was totally against it. We went through and got our own aide through his insurance through Bayauta. Through Bayauta, after he got his own aide that was with him constantly on the bus and in the school, he no longer wet himself. He no longer came home with food on his clothes or snot on his sleeves. He was sitting down eating regular meals. He no longer came home hungry because he had somebody there to help him. The kids, the other teachers and the other people in the class, in the school called them the wild students because they know we're not made to sit down and eat lunch and food at a regular place. This is kindergarten. It's special kindergarten. They should be taken care of properly in your schools. Also, by January, I'd received a letter stating that my son was going to be kicked out of that special kindergarten class because apparently after spending 3 hours over the summer down at your school district filling my son's papers to be allowed into your school, they had lost all his records, which wasn't fair to him. They lost them at the school and at your school district. Where are my son's papers? Where's his records? I want to know what person may have gotten his records, because that's not funny. That's important information that maybe some pervert may have picked up and have. I had to get those papers all back to that school. That's important information. I want to know where it's at.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board this evening for 3 minutes? Not seeing anyone. Moving on to the reports of committee and liaisons. Anyone on the board have committees or liaison information to report? Moving on, hearing none. We move to unfinished business, being none. We are now at item 5, new business.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Harkins?
I move we approve item 5 and item 7 as presented, that being the new business of the school district and the new business of the career and technical school district.
All right, we have a motion to accept item 5 and 7 in new business and new business in career and tech. We have a second by Mr. Spiegel. All in favor? Oh, I beg your pardon, this is a roll call.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Ms. Shenley? Mr. Spiegel?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich? Yes. Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cassillo?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Which takes us to item 6. Mr. Harkins?
I move that the school board of directors of the school district rejects the reapplication of the Huxley Charter School for the liberal arts and sciences.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harkins to reject the reapplication of the Huxley Charter School for Liberal Arts and Sciences by Mr. Harkins, seconded by Ms. Shenley. Roll call, please.
Any discussion?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Discussion on the motion?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Well, I can
Counselor.
review generally the deficiencies that are available, or we have reviewed them in executive session, whichever you prefer.
That would be fine, if you want to give us some.
I'll give you a brief
examples.
review. As you are aware, and members of the public are aware, a charter school in its application has to meet 26 separate points. If they fail to meet any one of the 26, your obligation is a statutory obligation. You have no discretion. You have to reject the application. So if there's one thing wrong, your obligation is to reject. Based on our review of the application and the testimony provided by the applicant, we have found that there are 14 deficiencies in the application. Those deficiencies include that the mission, vision, and need for the school are flawed and factually incorrect. They assert that the school district of the city of Erie is not student-centered and that we don't establish any relationships between teachers and students. That is factually inaccurate, and we put on a significant amount of testimony to support the inaccuracy of that premise. And therefore, if the facts in which they built the school on are incorrect, there is no need for the school. So they failed that premise. They have failed to establish how they're going to meet the educational goals in the school. The structure of the school itself was unclear based on the testimony provided by Mr. Messina at the hearing. He didn't tell us how you're going to intermix the cyber school with the regular education teachers and how that all was going to come into play. And when we asked questions about that, he said he didn't really know. And there was a lack of clear plan in regard to the operation of the school. Therefore, I don't see how they can meet their educational goals without an educational plan. There was no curriculum, and again, we've provided great detail testimony about the deficits in regard to the curriculum, and without a curriculum, you can't obviously educate students. The method of assessment, they did identify some methods of assessment. They didn't indicate how they're going to use those methods of assessment, and the rubrics for which they are going to use were so vague and unclear that it would be difficult to assess the students based on those rubrics. The admissions policy, in which they allow the admission of one class in grade 9 and don't allow any further admissions to the school until 4 years from now, we don't believe it's consistent with the school code or the charter school law. So their admissions policy is defective. Their attendance policy, they are required based on the testimony of the hearing, summer attendance, their summer program. But when asked about whether or not if a student fails to meet the requirements of the summer program, will that student be held accountable? They did not know the answer to that question. They didn't know if that student would be truant, so their mandatory student attendance policy is incomplete and deficient. The manner in which a community group is involved in planning the school, it became clear based on the testimony that Mr. Messina actually drafted this document. It didn't appear that there was much involvement of other individuals. During the hearing, he changed the application in regard to student caps and didn't seek input from anyone to do it. He just did it right on the spot, didn't ask the community, didn't ask teachers, didn't ask students. Obviously, I think that's a clear example of why the community input was not provided on this application. The financial plan is insufficient. He failed to provide information in regard to technology, the internet, the bus service, the transportation of students during the summer, the educational program during the summer, the financing of the cash flow deficits which were identified in his budget, so the budget is incomplete. There is no master schedule in regard to school calendar and length of day. He provided one student schedule. There is no master schedule, and we provided testimony that showed that based on his facility, based on his faculty, based on the number of students, a master schedule that he was proposing would not work. He did not provide a professional development plan, and we provided detailed testimony in regard to that. In regard to his proposed faculty, at one point he indicated they'd be 75% certified. At a later point in time, he recognized that that wouldn't work. If he's going to receive Title I funds, they'd have to be highly qualified. The applicant failed to show how they were going to improve pupil learning. They failed to show how they were going to increase learning opportunities for all pupils. They failed to show any use of different or innovative teaching methods. They failed to show how they would create new professional opportunities for teachers. They failed to show how this was an expanded choice. Basically, their entire program is something that's already in place, and it's already in place within the school district of the city of Erie. Based on that, they obviously have not shown that they have a comprehensive learning experience, which is an obligation that they have to provide. They have not shown that this would be a model school for anyone to follow. And there is clear concern about their cyber program and the intermixing of the cyber program with normal teaching structure, and what portion of this school will be cyber and what portion will be normal education. They were unclear on that. Based on all these concerns, again, we've found that they have met the requirements of the application for just 12 out of the 26. There's 14 areas that they're deficient. So our recommendation is that you reject the application.
Thank you, Attorney Senate. Is there any other discussion from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as
please.
you know, I was there that night, and it lasted 5.5 hours. And looking around the room, it was conducted in a respectful, orderly way, but most of the people in the room had already put in their workday and were there on their own time. And if it was our administrators participating, they still had done their day's work going into that. And so understandably, as the time went on, it was a little difficult to remain focused and to do a fair job of hearing and considering as we are obligated to do. I happen to agree with the solicitor that the criteria that must be met was not met. I do believe Mr. Messina is a caring, thoughtful man who believes he has a good idea, but I heard no compelling reason to jump to such a suggestion, especially because of what I heard that we do. At the last hour of that meeting was, for me, it woke me up internally. It stoked my enthusiasm. It recharged my batteries and made me proud of us and what we do. The administrators very concisely laid out what we do, what we offer, our adaptability, how we meet and have available to all students so many varied quality programs, and it really uplifted me, and I really came away from it impressed, impressed positively for what we do as a school district. So again, the reason I'll vote the way I do, which is yes to reject this, is based on them not meeting the criteria and hearing no compelling reason to abandon what we do or to accede to them. But I was very proud of our people and the way they concisely enumerated the good things that we do for students. We don't have success in every case, but we really have the programs and the people, we have the caring adults to administer them, and I just was filled with pride in what we did at the end of that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Harkins. Anyone else have any comments? I'd like to make one. I want to thank Attorney Senate for the countless hours that you have put us through and that you have dedicated to the service of Erie schools. And I certainly want to give special recognition to our Assistant Superintendent, Nancy Sedeli, who did a yeoman's job in doing the research, and the committee that you had worked with in reviewing the entire application and the process and citing the cons and the pros, if there were any, in that application, and bringing that out during the course of that 5.5-hour marathon. It was essential for us to all understand exactly what we needed to pay particular attention to. And the points that were made during the course of that meeting were well vociferous. The vociferous attorney that we had brought out all the points that were brought together by the committee. So my congratulations to the administration and Dr. Battams. I don't want to short you on it because I know you'd spent quite a bit of time. These charter applications take a huge amount of time from our normal routine. Assistant Superintendent Sedeli has so many other duties to perform that she had to set aside to review the application with Attorney Senate and her committee. And they had to literally depart from their normal routine to take the time that it took to give us a true and honest opinion on what we need to do. And I can't thank you enough. This is not the first time we have gone through this, and it probably, in all probability, won't be our last, but we need to recognize that this is a costly endeavor, not only on behalf of those that submit charters, but on behalf of the school district that has to spend an inordinate amount of time in reviewing these applications. I could tell you that I'd received the initial reapplication from the Huxley Charter School, and it, quite frankly, is inches thick and thousands of pages. I think War and Peace was easier to read, but in all honesty, it did take quite a bit of time. And I appreciate your dedication in providing the information to us. So with that, if no one else has a comment, may we have roll call again, please?
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Ms. Shenley?
Yes.
Mr. Spiegel?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cassillo?
Yes. Next on the agenda, approval of minutes. I'd like to have the approval of the meeting minutes from July 15th, 2015, as attached electronically to the agenda. May I have a motion we approve, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Harkins, seconded by Mr. Spiegel. All in favor? Opposed? Next, bills and payroll.
I move that we pay them as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Harkins, move that we accept. Second by Mr. Spiegel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Ms. Shenley? Mr. Spiegel?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich? Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cassillo?
Yes. Thank you. Next is the report of our superintendent. Dr. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Cassillo. First of all, I would like to add my thanks to the presidents for the absolutely phenomenal job that our administrative staff did, led by Nancy Sedali, in reviewing and providing their testimony on the Huxley Charter School application. I think our public should understand that the cost of that work is immeasurable. And the only one point that I would clarify in Mr. Cassillo's comments is that the really huge task that is encompassed by all the preparations for the coming school year still got done at the same time that the review of the Huxley Charter School application, so most of our administrators involved and our counselors and teachers who were involved in that process did so in addition to their regular tasks. So I just again want to express my admiration and my thanks for the hard work. Another thing I need to comment on is that our Director of Communications, Mr. Matt Cummings, who is currently on vacation, is leaving us to take a position in the administration and faculty of West Virginia University's School of Communications. And so much of his work is maybe not accredited properly, but anyone who has noticed the improvement in our overall transparency as an organization, the quality of our website, our frequent newsletter that is distributed to all of our employees, the program that we have whereby we've provided a vehicle for people to acknowledge the good work of their fellow employees, the innumerable pitches that the local media get with regard to the positive stories that are taking place throughout our district. Those are all the work of Matthew Cummings. And Matt's been an absolutely invaluable member of our leadership team, as well as the architect of our district's rebranding as Erie's Public Schools. And he'll be sorely missed, but we all wish him good luck in his new endeavor. He was very clear with me that his ultimate goal someday was to work in higher education, and we're proud that he's served us so well and that he's realized that dream. So, while we'll miss him, we certainly have benefited from his good work.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Yes.
Add
Mr.
me,
Harkins?
I echo the superintendent's feelings about Matt. We'll miss him, but we should have expected that someone with his abilities and his, all that he has, we were lucky to have him as long as we did, I suppose. It probably had to come someday, his departure, and of course we wish him well, and West Virginia's gain is our loss, but he was wise beyond and experienced beyond his years. He was very savvy for a young man, and I wish him well, and we'll miss him. I miss him. I'm sure we all do.
Thank you, Mr. Harkins. Anyone else? Discussion? I echo
I
both.
move we approve the report of the superintendent.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Castillo, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I beg your pardon, I thought you were.
That was just a sort of an observation. No, I apologize, but there is,
Please.
it's kind of incomprehensible that that we should have to be discussing and noting the passing of 3 of our East High students in 1 month. If these deaths happened by some tragic accident or by some natural causes, they'd be tragic in their own right. But the fact that they're the result of violence between students, youth in our neighborhoods is shocking. It's disturbing, and it's cause for great concern as we contemplate the start of a new school year. There's little I can say. I can't make sense of it in my own mind, but communities like ours around the country are dealing with the same specter, and I think it's important for our families to know, for our students who will be returning to us on August 31st, that school is one of the safest places they can be during the day. And we will continue our commitment to ensuring that safety through the work of our employees, through our police department, through our relationships with other community organizations, and in short of offering any guarantees, we will make that commitment that we will do everything in our power to make sure that our schools remain safe places for our students to learn. That said, there are a lot of efforts underway in the community, and I want to also assure our folks outside of not just our parents and our students, but everybody out there, that we are committed to participating in these efforts, that we know that since we have our students for 180 days a year, for a significant portion of each of those days, that we will do what we can to both ensure their physical safety while they're with us, but also to work on programs and work in concert with other members of the community to do our part to try to combat this violence. I applaud the county executive's efforts to look at this as a matter of public health and to try to leverage resources that might be available to our community that way. We'll continue to work on that. I applaud the work of organizations like the Blue Coats, our community partners who help us to interrupt this cycle of violence at every chance they get. I also want to point out the fact that we have a very viable and active student support department headed by Danny Jones, which supports our mental health professionals and our behavior specialists, all of whom are available to our students when they return. And again, would add the assurance that if there are any of our students who lost friends, lost family members, are scared or shaken by the violence, that those resources are there for you when you come back to school. We'll all continue to think about this, to work together, to pray together, to figure out how we can introduce hope in the lives of some of the students who obviously don't have any, who are willing to throw their own lives away by engaging in this behavior. It's a big job. And to our employees, I'm sure there are concerns out there that many of our staff have about their own safety. And again, I'll make the same statement to those folks, that we will continue to provide a safe environment just as we have. And we'll be more vigilant, we'll communicate more, and we'll make sure that we identify those students who need our help and our intervention as early as possible. So on a happy note, we are coming back to school on August 31st. And I'm pleased to report to the board and to the public that our non-instructional staff, as they always do year in and year out, have been extremely hard at work making sure that our buildings are ready. If anyone's driven down 38th Street, you've noticed that preparations are in place to repair the roof at Grover Cleveland, so hopefully we can reduce the number of 5-gallon buckets that are needed to collect the water in our second grade classrooms. Our work at the Central Tech to make sure that our gas line is intact is nearing completion, if not complete. And hundreds of teachers have participated in very professionally developed and run professional learning sessions, and that work will continue right up to the start of school. Our administrators have attended professional development sessions where we've talked not just about how we can do a better job of combating violence in our community, but also working on implementing all sorts of state mandates. And we're ready. We're ready to educate the Erie's youth. We're ready to do our part to make sure our community is healthy and safe. And we're looking forward to August 31st and getting back to the work that all of our professionals do so well. So I can assure the board that we'll be ready when the doors open and invite you to join us in any of those professional development efforts. On the 25th of August, we'll have our all-school in-service in 2 sessions at the Bayfront Center. I'll be co-presenting with Mr. Henderson, the president of the Erie Education Association, again, to welcome our staff back and to thank them for the work they do and will do. And we're really eager for the school year to start.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Mr. Harkins?
just briefly, in a general way, Dr. Adams, any news or anything to report on the state budget situation?
Yes, the state budget is still at a stalemate. There is an impasse. The governor has outlined his intention for the state budget. The Republicans offered their own version of such a budget. And while there are many things that have sort of been agreed to in principle, the imposition of additional taxes that would yield additional revenue that the governor has earmarked for public education have not been agreed to. So rumors that we're hearing, it's the best I can offer, that we anticipate a budget no later than October. But again, we'll wait and see. And I would urge anyone to contact your representatives. And again, the governor has outlined a very rational economic case for a further investment, expanded investment in public education. And I encourage you to throw in your support and contact your legislators.
Thank you, Doctor. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Have a motion, please, to approve the report of the superintendent as presented by Dr. Adams.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Shenley, seconded by Mr. Brzezinski. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the report of the secretary. I'd like a motion, please, for the approval of the report of the secretary for the month ending May 31st, 2015.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Harkins, seconded by Mr. Fabrizi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Ms. Shenley?
Yes.
Mr. Spiegel?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cassillo?
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry. Award on bids, we have none. And the last matter, is there any other board matter for discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Brzezinski?
I'd like to apologize for my tardiness. Wasn't necessary. I would have been here on time. But I just want everybody to know that if I were here, the vote on the charter school would have remained unanimous. I congratulate everybody else on the board. It was a lot of reading, but I think we made the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski.
Mr. President,
Ms. Shenley?
I just quickly want to say, I do want to say goodbye to Mr. Cummings. He has been a wonderful addition to Erie's public schools, and he has gotten out more information in the 3 or 4 years that he's been here than I've seen in 13 years as a board member, so I'm going to miss him very much. Also, I also just want to say something to the parents of returning students and the parents of new students. Our teachers, our administrators, our principals, our non-instructional people are all dedicated to ensuring that your children will have a positive experience here. And your children, in my opinion, will receive the very best education they could possibly get anywhere else in this country. I think that we have the premier school district in all of the United States. Just my opinion, but I truly believe it.
Thank you, Ms. Shenley.
Mr. President?
Yes, Ms. McMahon?
I would just like to say, or give my condolences again to the families that lost students. I was able to make it to Elijah's fundraiser and not to the others, but my heart really does go out to those students, and I just encourage parents to make sure that they're keeping close watch over their children and making sure that they're setting a good example for their children, so that they know that, what is expected of them when they come to school and when they are in the community in general, because these acts of violence are starting to become too much when they're reaching to the inside of school, or not to the inside of school, but to our children that are a part of the district. It's just very sad to see such young lives being lost in our community, and I just want to thank Dr. Badams for ensuring to our parents and families that it'll be safe here, and I'm confident that it will be safe for this school year. So like he said, the safest place is here. So please send your children to school. The last place they need to be is running the streets during the day. They need to be right here learning in the safest place possible. And another comment that I wanted to give, and I'm kind of sad that the family that was here with their special needs child left, but I did see one of our administrators go out and talk to them after they left. I just wanted to make sure that there was a very thorough follow-up with that situation. It kind of really disturbed me, the things that, not knowing, I don't know if everything was true or partially true, but whatever the case may be, as a parent who has children that are going to Edison, and as a school board director, and they'll both be in autistic support classrooms, I just want to ensure that, none of those things are really happening, and that everyone is getting the best service possible provided to their child, special needs or not. So I definitely feel confident that we are providing the best, but I definitely would like follow up on that. I would like to see a follow up on that investigation myself personally. So I just, I did see one of our administrators go out and talk to them, and I really do appreciate that, and I'm pretty sure that whatever their heart will be settled for this school year, but I just wanted to make sure that was followed up with.
Mr. Castillo?
Thank you. Dr. Bannon?
And I assure you, we will thoroughly investigate that and we'll report back to the board.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mr.
Any
Chairman?
director? Yes.
I'll wait.
Oh, I beg your pardon? Who said?
I'm fine.
I would like to, on the record, I feel obliged to say some remarks on the record about the passing of Dr. Raymond Dombrowski, who passed away since the last time we were assembled in this room. He wore so many hats with the school district. He successfully met a responsibility in so many different areas. He came up through the ranks from a teacher and a coach and eventually became superintendent of schools. I happen to know he got his start as a teacher and coach in Oil City, Pennsylvania at St. Joe's High School. I happen to know because he succeeded my father there. The two of them then came to Erie and worked here as teachers, coaches, and administrators. But when Ray came to Erie, he was a coach and teacher at Tech Memorial, and Ed and a lot of sports fans would know that he's credited with luring Fred Biletnikoff away from Duke Detzel and Bobby Bravender at East High School, and luring him gently to Tech Memorial, and his brother Bobby followed, and the rest is history. And many people are aware that Ray's connection with someone in the athletic department at Florida State University led to Fred Biletnikoff choosing to attend there. He went on to become All-American and Super Bowl MVP, and he was quoted years later as saying, for all the coaches he's played under, that Ray Dombrowski and Walt Strasser were his best. and he's played for John Madden and many noteworthy coaches. And whenever Fred came back to town, he made it a point to visit Ray at St. Mary's West. But Ray also served the district in other capacities. He was the secretary business manager of the school district. Up until the late 1960s, the district was structured differently, and that was the second most important position in the district behind the superintendent. They were responsible for all the business end of everything, and they had a lot more responsibility than it's structured now. But Ray held that job and did an admirable job, although it was briefly. Most people who were aware of his work say he really shone as what was called Director of Federal Programs. He was the first person to hold that position from the early 70s on, and he wrote the outline on how it should be done, and he really stood out and did an outstanding job as the Director of Federal Programs. He eventually became the Superintendent of Schools and subsequently retired, but also worth noting, throughout that period, he was a prominent District 10 football and basketball official. He was seen and participated over the decades in many football, basketball contests in District 10, and he served as a leader of the District 10 officials organization and was a rules interpreter and mentored many of the officials as they came in and became and went on to their own careers as good officials in District 10 in football and basketball. And I know Ed will remember, and I'll bet Bob and Mary do, that when we were all younger and WJET AM radio was the station everybody listened to, every weeknight at 10:45, Ray had a 15-minute show. I think it was called Let's Talk Sports, but I'm not certain. But anyway, he would give scores and highlights and explanations of rules and controversies that might have happened that day or that week, and he always concluded the broadcast with saying his name and saying, if you can't play a sport, try hard to be one. And he always had that positivity to him then and throughout his career. Hardworking guy, very capable, and I just felt compelled to comment on the record and highlight and thank him for and note the career of Dr. Ray Dombrowski.
John,
Thank
if
you,
I could
John,
put an
I think
addendum
that was
on there.
I'm sorry.
If I may put an addendum, we did forget to mention he was also a professor at Edinburgh, and many of our staff today learned how to be administrators in those classes at Edinburgh. I took that class. I know. He made it real, like he made all kinds of things real. When we had a class in administration in Edinburgh, we talked about everything that happened in the district. Not only our district, but other districts, and why it happened and how it could have been better. He was a man among men, there's no doubt about that, and John did a great job of everything else.
Yes, he certainly did. Thank you, John. Ed, thank you.
Mr. Cassillo?
Mr. Badams?
I have to add on to both. Ray Dombrowski was my professor at Edinburgh, and I never knew him as an administrator here. I'd heard many stories while he taught his various classes that I took, but I'd say half of my administrative courses were taught by Ray Dombrowski, and I communicated with him less than a year ago because a number of issues that I had to deal with, there were echoes of some of the advice that Ray had given me that were in my own decision-making, and I wanted to let him know that, and got a really nice reply back from him. He was kind. I always knew, I'm sure he had another side. He was a firm guy and a coach, but I only ever knew him as a very gentle, wise, caring person, and I extend my sympathy to his family. It's a great loss.
Thank you, Dr. Badams.
Track coach, I left that out too. Trained a lot of very successful track athletes at Tech Memorial.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? Being no further business to conduct, I would like a motion to adjourn.
Let me make that motion as long as I was late.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Brzezinski. And Mr. Spagle seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight.